Hi, Adam. Welcome to the Subscribe podcast. So this podcast is for digital professionals, but we speak with founders who create generational companies and do cool things, like builders just like yourself. So I'm very happy to have you here. So Adam, please introduce yourself. How is it going and what brought you here today?
Thanks, Pi, and thanks for having me on. My name is Adam Lindsay. I'm the founder of Koh, that's KOH.com. We are an Australian originated eco home cleaning products brand, and we are coming into our 10th year, just coming into our 9th birthday, coming into our 10th year of operation. And we supply into the UK, Australia, and just more recently New Zealand.
What about Austria, where I'm currently based?
Well, I think, the Austrians do have a culture of cleaning, and it's something that I have often wondered. So Europe certainly, would be a good next step for us, I'd say.
Yeah. Just a few letters difference to Australia, so it should be fine, right?
There's a small language barrier, but, we've got AI to do all that for us these days.
Okay, nice chit chat. Well, thank you for coming. I really appreciate the time. You're a very busy person.
My pleasure.
What brought you here today? I mean, you could have talked to 1 million people, but you decided to say, hey, I'm going to join today on this podcast to speak about how to create your business and inspire others. So what inspired you to come here today? Yeah, of all the things you could do.
You did, I have to say, just for any viewers that are watching, we obviously met in Bondi, and we're training together, and I've got some very fond memories of some long walks back from the gym where you would sort of go on a long route of about 2 or 3 kilometers out of your way while we were just chatting all things startup. And now look, I really love just talking to other founders about business ideas and challenges and all the rest of it. I find it just naturally just very fascinating. So yes, that's why I'm here, to do more of that. Although we're not going to have to walk 3 or 4 kilometers today. So
that's great. It's going to save us some time, so we can record it and listen to ourselves, like what we do as founders. No, I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, one thing I want to say, Adam, is you are a very generous person. I remember we were sitting down in the very beginning of my startup journey after the workout we went to 98 Gym. It's the best gym in Bondi. Yeah. Being completely wrecked after ski erg.
High on dopamine hits.
But do you remember when we were sitting on this bench and I was explaining this business, and it was this other founder who just said, my idea is shit. And you remember that? I do.
Another founder said your idea was shit.
Yeah, no, exactly. And then you actually were standing up for me, and I didn't even ask. You were like, hey, I kind of see it. Maybe you were lying, maybe you were not, but I think you just gave me so much confidence that you have my back and stuff. It's very easy to dismiss ideas. I think you really see in other people, like at least that's my experience, like, okay, just a founder, they're doing some stuff and it's going to work out. I think it's kind of your mindset. And I really want to say I appreciate that. I remember it to this day. And it made my day. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Well, I wasn't aware. But listen, I think I just naturally want to give support and encouragement to anybody that's having a go. And it's having a go. It's very easy to sort of be sat on the sidelines and tell people that's not going to work and don't bother doing that and all the rest of it. And look, those people are like the natural obstacles that you are going to encounter along your way as a startup guy. What is it they say? A startup is an idea held by 1 or 2 people that nobody else believes in. So I think that's very much it. So you have to be resilient to those things, but also it's kind of it's nice to get a little bit of a sort of genuine sort of encouragement, I guess, which is something I always do. Jesus Christ, it's a hard path to take. You need all the encouragement you can take.
Yeah, exactly. I was kind of desperate at the time, but yeah, it somehow worked out.
Yeah, well, look at you now. See?
So, well, that's one thing you learned on your journey on creating Koh. So what was one surprising thing you learned about it? Was it that, or were there other things that you learned while building your company?
Man, there's so many lessons. Sort of joke sometimes. I could literally have a book full of lessons, and then I've got a follow-up book, which is the book of mistakes that I've made along the way. But I think probably the earliest lesson, through my entrepreneurial journey was, at Koh, I had sort of had 3 other businesses, startup ideas, all loosely had the same sort of concept. It was about doing something better for the planet and doing, I had this kind of that was my high level thing, to do something of some use or some good. It wasn't necessarily saving the planet, it wasn't that grandiose, but I knew I wanted to contribute positively. And I had 3 failed businesses behind me. They hadn't got investment, they hadn't even gotten that far. Do you know what I mean? And so by the third one, and I'm sort of 45 years old at this stage, chucked my IT sales, enterprise sales career out the window. And I say that, and it paid well, but I just found it really soul destroying. And that's a difficult bridge to jump through when you're earning good money, but your soul's getting destroyed. And then you go, oh, I'm going to go and do this startup thing. That's what I'm going to follow.
Plus, your wife was pregnant at the time, right?
Yeah, well, we'd had 1 kid at that stage, and
Okay.
we had another on the way. And I was kind of on when the third one, which was like a food-based idea, and that wasn't working out. I fell into a very depressed state, really, because I was kind of like, shit, I'm 45, I haven't got anything going on, and I've just got all this highway. It felt like a highway of failed attempts at running.
34. You were 34, right? Or 34 at the time?
No, 45.
Now you're 45.
No, I'm 53 now.
Oh,
I'll get the timelines.
You look so young. I thought you were 45. Oh my god!
You're just throwing in a compliment there. I'll take it. But no, I was 45 just prior to founding Koh, and like I say, I was kind of like, man, I'm just making a mess of all of this. I can't do it. I really wanted to do it, but am I the right? But all that sort of usual sort of self doubt, and I guess the persistence, that old chestnut, which is a theme, but the persistence to continue on. I'm now able to look back at those 3 failures and very much now see them, with the benefit of hindsight, that they were actually stepping stones, and they were learning stepping stones that absolutely put me in the position of then, founding something that had some relative success, which is Koh. So that was my first, the big eye opener, really, is that sometimes, I think just the process of doing. I think prior to those 3 business ideas as well, I had about 500 crazy ideas that I just never did anything with. I kind of like got quite a fertile imagination. I'm quite creative. And I was always sort of like, coming up with this business idea and that business idea, but never doing anything with them. And the majority of people never do anything with their ideas for running a business. So, that's why, just going back to your point.
What's the reason for that? What makes people not do anything with it?
A multitude of reasons, and I probably should have listened to some of them. Glad I didn't. But you know what I mean? It's financial security. You literally, it'd be a great idea, but I've got this job, I've got the mortgage, I've got kids, and all the rest of it. I can't go and just recklessly go and take the plunge and start, embarking on a journey that's not paying any money. So, but I was too sort of irresponsible to kind of, do that the sensible way. So yeah, I think just sort of put that into some single soundbite. It's doing is progress. The thing that you're doing may not actually be the thing that you end up doing, that you find hopefully some measure of happiness and fulfillment and reward. But you have to be doing stuff. Ideas, kind of, everyone can have ideas, but it's doing it, following and pursuing the idea.
Execution is the hardest part.
Yeah, and what's it they say is execution is the multiplier of idea value, and without execution, ideas are worth nothing.
In Meta, we had the saying, execution is bigger than strategy. And it's so true. I think Meta was the execution machine for a long time. I mean, now it's like a corporate, from my point of view, like any other company. But it has to be. But yeah, I think it's great having ideas, but you really have to execute and do stuff, like get things done.
And I don't think, if you're going into that and you're committing to, a reasonable extent, then you're benefiting from that. It may not, like I say, it may not give you the immediate reward. It might fail and all the rest of it. But, I think it's just the movement forward, pushing an idea, trying to push yourself forward, really, and doing is the thing that you got to do.
Well, I mean, you talked about your basically failure and then success, or failure, learning. You said the book of mistakes. I really resonate with that. I think a lot of my parts are learnings, both on my corporate or startup scale-up background and my previous business and this one. But people only see when things are going well. I think you're a high source of energy and positivity. To me, it's very aspirational. I think I'm also a little bit like you in a way, like ADHD, doing a lot of things.
And I would say the same to you, Pi. I really do love your energy. What you put out there, and you've helped me out before as well. It's a really great character, just to want to help without, do good things without an expectation of direct reward. Really, I just personally feel, and I think we're both similar. I don't want to paint myself to be a saint, but I get a personal sort of satisfaction out of, helping. It's a nice thing. I
Yeah.
think that's the way that the universe is generally wired. I'd say possibly part of the problem with today's society is that there's too much focus on helping ourselves, and that's kind of not really where the magic is.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I really love to help. I'm also selfish in many aspects. We can talk about later, but I think one thing I'm curious about is like, yeah, you have all this positive energy and high energy. So what do you actually do when things get tough? Like, what is Adam like when things get tough?
Just recoil into my shell, get depressed, have a breakdown.
Well, I have micro breakdowns. I call them micro breakdowns. Like little. I call that like not mini vacation, but mini burnouts. Like no, actually, I mean I'm kidding. Like when I need time, I take like one day off or so. That's basically my thing. Like right now, I'm moving like I think at 70 or 80% pace. I'm still trying to do Saturdays if I can, or a little bit, but I'm now 1.5 years in, like non-stop working, pretty much. Yeah. What about yourself? Like, how is Adam like when things get tough? Like, how do you manage it? What's your
You
advice?
might, you might need to ask my wife for the authentic answer, because look, I would have to say honestly, throughout the last 9 years, we had a period leading up to, which was very stressful because nobody even knew if this was going to work. So that was kind of like the lead. And then that was followed by a period that we got traction, and, the thing went off like a bit of a rocket. And that's a different sort of mania. You've got the mania, then you've sort of replaced it with this sort of doubt and is it, isn't it? And, there's no money coming in. And then you get the, hopefully. And that then is this sort of exhilarating ride, but that obviously then brings its whole other problems along with it as well. Like, not in software world so much, but, in terms of we sell physical products. So then you've got to get the stock and you've got that kind of stress. And then look, inevitably, I think they call it the valley of death for, the companies typically go through. You'll have a growth and then you've kind of got something, challenges happen, staff turnover, whatever it is. There's always going to be something coming out of left field that derails the business. And we certainly had ours for a period over COVID. And I can't say that was, all directly related to COVID, but that's when it happened. And I kind of had a nervous breakdown looking back on it, and that was really as nervous break. I think it's a nervous breakdown. I don't know. It's if bawling your eyes out, sat on your bed upstairs on a Saturday lunchtime is that, then that's kind of what it was. And I think from my family's perspective, I was just like a walking zombie.
Yeah.
So
I can take. I can. I want to add something here. I think that I resonate with it. So I think I have this high energy, but then I think from I moved here with my ex-partner, and then from mid to Austria, and then from mid-October to about 2-3 months, I was just pretty much pushing and becoming like a walking zombie. I wasn't crying really and feeling anything till she left me in
that Austrian tough guy, the Austrian tough guy.
No, but I was like, I had a breakdown when she left me, like mid-January, or then she left the country in February or so. I don't know the dates, but to me it felt like a big surprise. I mean, she wouldn't say that, but I think to me it was a big surprise. It was traumatizing and sad, and I think I will never unfeel the pain. I think I will be traumatized for the rest of my life because we had such a strong bond, but it's also a big learning. And then from this day onward, I think everything changed. Like I started like feeling the stress of the business. I didn't feel invincible anymore. I wasn't able to go at percent, like more like 70, 50 some weeks. Like now I think I'm okay. And yeah, I was like a walking zombie. Yeah, I would say, yeah.
And the worst thing about that is within, I think, the startup community and you obviously have investors and all that sort of thing. Nobody wants to see the founders having a really shit time and is really depressed and, has kind of lost his mojo a bit or her mojo. It's not something that you can really take out into public. I know there's, and it's a good thing that there's a lot more openness now around mental health and all the rest of it. But as much as you can talk about that, investors don't want to invest in somebody that's having.
Yeah, you have to be strong. You have to be fucking strong.
So the thing is,
yeah.
You've got investors. It's not helpful, I would say, that you're sort of going to hop onto, your blogging channel or whatever and go, guys, I'm really depressed and I can't work at the moment and all the rest of it, because the investors are, need the money back.
I mean, I was working still like a machine, like still above average, like 100%. I was in meetings crying while I had the meetings because I knew there's no option B. I had to keep some stability and keep going on the mission. I had to keep going on the vision and what we're building. I had to do it. I had to save our customers. I don't know what your situation was, but I just had to keep going.
And I think that was it. I had an inordinate amount of pressure. I had friends that had invested quite a lot of money into Koh. This was everything, I guess, really, because I'm a high risk sort of appetite person. I didn't have any savings or anything. Everything, my sort of family wealth, if you like, was tied up and is still tied up in Koh, and so just carrying the burden of that, going from this kind of rocket ship to suddenly, there are problems with the business, no different to any other business has faced, but it turned pretty quickly due to a number of things. And it was just an awful period of my life. I think it's probably the worst period.
But one thing that really comes out, and I think I don't want to call it resilience, is like just accepting your emotions. I think you accept your emotions like somewhat. It doesn't mean you're weak and you need to go on sharing. I think it's actually, if you know yourself, I think you're just stronger. I think it doesn't mean, thankfully I wasn't at a point where like I wanted to stop living and become a beggar or change my life, like that wasn't the case. But I think it's like very important to know your emotion, what's going on, and deal with it and then use it.
Totally. And I think, the other takeaway is that, certainly my mind, but I think it's kind of common amongst humans that we can end up sort of catastrophizing a little bit, that, this is the worst, and you're sort of playing that out. What's going to happen if this happens? And oh my God. Blah, blah, blah. So I kind of dealt with all that. But I think now, having that behind me, it obviously getting through a really tough period for anybody does hopefully have some positives. It builds resilience. I feel calmer now. That right, if I can go through that, I'm going to come back out the other side. Whilst I would never have chosen to go through that, the fact that I've gone through that, and come back out the other side, you're just a better person for it.
100%. 100%. Like I feel like nothing matters really, right? You just have to.
I wouldn't say it's like nothing matters, but I just have I guess just a calmer perspective on things. It's kind of like I felt like I went through hell.
Sorry, let me reframe it. Like nothing matters in your emotional world. It's all relative. Yes. Sorry, yes. I think it's, of course it matters, but it also doesn't. Yeah. It's just a train and it drives by and does things. And
I tell you what helped me out through a lot of, what helped me out at the beginning of this journey. And then when I went to that really tough spot was just, reading a lot of Stoic literature. I certainly not going to sit and tell you I'm an exemplary student of it, but just, there's so much around Stoicism about just, sort of walking through the fire and what's the classic saying, and it too shall pass. It's those sort of messages that, that everything you're going through, there's our ancestors and people today that are going through much, much worse, and sort of just also getting that into context, that your life isn't some never before, experienced special hell that nobody else has had to go through. It's living a full life really is having to deal with some of this stuff sometimes. And
even what do you say? Even if you're 1 in a million, there are still 10,000 people like you. So yeah, I loved it. Walking through the fire.
Yeah.
Is it coming from your mom or dad's side or both sides, or where is this? Is this how did you grow up when you were young? Did you walk through the fire?
I think I had a sort of typical 1970s childhood, single parent family, and I kind of was in many ways left a lot to my own devices, which has its downsides, but also there's some positives there that I just have a kind of a bit of.
What do you mean left by your own devices?
Well,
What does it mean?
I just didn't have. Well, I can compare the parenting that we have at home here. And again, I've never positioned myself as the best parent in the world, but our kids have two pretty attentive parents that have got an eye on them, maybe too much of an eye on them at all times. We're on it. I didn't have two parents that were on it and going, I was kind of just out on the streets a lot of the time, out playing back before dark, sometimes after dark, and being a bit of a rapscallion from a young age, kind of like about the age of 8.
You haven't really changed that much, I have to say. Still playing around after night.
Yeah, that's right. So I think that just built some some early childhood resilience, and it's like I say, it hasn't necessarily.
Do you think children should play unsupervised and stuff more?
I do. It's interesting. Not to make this a parent podcast, but I read an interesting thing. They said, we've shifted from, certainly my generation, that kids were able, they had a lot more freedom 24/7 in the real world, the analog world. And what we've swapped that over for is now that they have very little freedom in the analog world. There's always a parent on them. And I know that we're not this, it's a cultural, social phenomenon of our time that generally parents, certainly in Western countries, I think, are just kind of are on it, and they're sort of like, where are the kids? They're outside. Is there somebody? We're like that. Whereas I was a kid, I was kind of like just outside and, running amok sort of thing. However, now the problem that we have is that our kids have found themselves having complete sort of liberty in the digital world 24/7. I won't say it's 24/7. We have some pretty strict device usage, but it's a problem for all parents. And so now they don't go outside, they don't socialize, and then they're online, which is far more toxic and terrible than any sort of danger.
100%. Oh my God! I was left to my own devices as well. My mom was like single raising me, an artist, and always considered to be a bad parent because I was playing in the park after dark and sleeping with friends. I mean, she was single raised she was single raising because my father passed away, so it was kind of a difficult situation.
Mine just buggered on.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. I think your scenario is even worse, But I think if you left to your own devices, I think it also created some challenges, I have to admit, but it created a lot of resilience and taking risks and being able to make friends. I think being able to make friends is something I think that people are very uncomfortable with. So when I'm going to raise my children, I think I will leave my children. Of course, I'm going to love them and I'm going to make sure they're smart, but I will leave them to their own devices. I will let them go out and play with the kids in Bondi unsupervised, or, that's what I'm going to do.
But here's the issue. It's difficult when you can send your kids outside to play in the street, but there's no other kids in the street because none of the other parents are doing it. Do you know what I mean? So it almost becomes like because nobody's doing it, then nobody else. It's hard to put that, into practice because, well, who you go
really?
Play with? Nobody's.
Interesting.
It's a phenomenon of our time. So
then you need more than one kid, so they play together.
Yeah. Mine just fight though. I've got two. They just fight.
They can fight on the beach in the sand. That's so funny. Well, I mean, we covered already a lot of topics around your journey. I mean, is there one thing that you wish you had known before starting Koh? Because you had 3 businesses before, was Koh like, hey, at this time I knew everything. I knew how to run this business, and it happened exactly how it is. So is there one thing you wish you had known before that?
I think the importance of having some mentorship, which I didn't take. We suddenly found ourselves with this, again, rocket ship situation. As I mentioned, I've got ADHD. I've got very poor attention to detail. I don't like reading long, wordy documents. So I was kind of, I'll just sign that. But so I think and I think the other thing is that you, as an entrepreneur, will get a lot of advice from people. And, a lot of that advice will come from stakeholders who don't necessarily, well, they've got their interests at heart, not yours necessarily. You know what I mean? And you're going to get advice from them. And then you're also going to get advice from well-intentioned friends who probably haven't got a clue really about running a business, but they're still going to give you an opinion. And so it's kind of gets hard at that
I
stage.
definitely did that. I definitely gave advice to friends who are entrepreneurs. I really regret it now. Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, and look, we've all done
Yeah.
it. We all have had an opinion, and oh no, you don't want to be doing that, and this, So we're all guilty of it. But I
Yeah, I
really,
think Koh should be red. Like, why is it green? I think it should be red. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. You don't want to call it that. You don't want to color it that way. And so you have all these opinions and voices, and I really feel that I would have benefited from having a trusted mentor, somebody that didn't have any investment or didn't have any interest financially in the business, that had done this before or done something similar, and I didn't have it. And I just don't know why. It seems so obvious. It's not like I didn't know what mentors were before I started Koh.
Did you have a coach, like a business coach or anything like that?
So I just went and, honestly paid an unnecessary high price for making bad decisions along the way, where I think I could have probably saved myself a lot of angst by, I don't know.
What do you mean bad decision? Like financially or with people or?
All of it. Hiring,
Yeah, but
hiring. And
no mentor can do that,
well,
right?
no, you can, but I think I just, it's probably almost like that, not to get into my childhood, but, probably having a lack of a father figure. And it's almost like I kind of feel like I replicated that again. Like at that point, I needed a father figure, somebody that was,
That's so interesting.
And it just didn't even occur to me, and maybe just because I'm so used to just figure it out. You know what I mean? We're just kind of, we'll get through it, and just taking that approach. And the smarter approach would have been, and you're right, nobody knows everything. Nobody's, not some, mystical being that you can get on your side that's going to give you all the right guidance. You'll never make another mistake. But it's just having somebody there that, that you could have had as a soundboard. And I just didn't do it.
So, I mean, interesting that you bring up, I was also missing my father figure and I looked for it in different ways. Yeah. Also paid a high price for it in my careers previously, because I was too attached to some people. Never mind. But, I have a psychologist for 10 years now, and I have a coach for 3 years or so.
Well done.
And that's also when I realized with the psychologist, I have this father figure, like it's a little bit older person we speak, and it fulfills this need. And my friend who's a psychologist actually said, hey, who should I speak to? Like, what type? I was like, yeah, I just think about the gender and the age. Like, why would I think about the gender and age? And they're like, well, it's important you feel comfortable. And it's so right. It's like, oh my God, like, I'm so biased, but it really helped me. Like, who do you think you need? Like, I think some old father figure like guy. I mean, I have my stepfather. He's like a father to me, to be honest. But yeah, it's kind of funny that you mention it. Like, I definitely have this bias, and it's so true. And yeah, that's very interesting.
I'm with you, and I'm sure there's a whole lot of psychology around that. But I think same as you, I kind of have that sort of image of what that mentor would have been like for at least the beginning of the Koh journey and all the rest of it, and even prior to that. And it's kind of still strange. I still haven't sorted it out yet.
Yeah. Well. Now you know.
Never too late to get yourself a father figure mentor on board. There needs to be a website, findafatherfigurementor.com.
It can be an AI you can chat with, right?
Well, yeah, that's probably where it's going. God, although they're maybe a bit too prone to hallucinating to be too trusted.
Yeah, hallucinating, like all this wording, all these AI words. It's so funny, all these buzzwords. Love it. Hallucinating. Like, I want to throw something in,
Yeah.
We had, I don't know. We had some, everyone loves AI, and we're doing a lot of AI work where we help companies unlock being listed in ChatGPTs and stuff like that, and with call it social seeding. And anyhow, we're doing some work there. And as soon as you get started and you share with the client that how you're using prompts, everyone on the team becomes like a prompt engineer, and everyone has opinions. Like, it's so annoying. Like, you cannot move. Everyone has like better model, a better prompt, and to be honest, we literally work with
the other day, and they cut the God prompt.
The new, and I'm just tired of it. It doesn't make a difference. Like, I think it does make a difference what model you use, what thing you use on a execution level. You just need to use something and you get incremental return from using Claude versus this and that. If you want to improve operational stuff and things, at least from what I've seen, people are so obsessive. It's kind of insane. Like, I
I mean,
thought I'm obsessive, but I think I'm not now,
I I
understanding
think the
that.
interesting thing is that your sort of your humanity and those elements of being human that AI will never be able to have, sort of like that truly creative, process and insights, and knowing what questions to ask. Those are the things that really come to the fore in getting the best out of AI in a way. Do you know what I mean? Because you got to know, you still got to have the idea or what you're trying to achieve at this high level. You've got this thing and it's like a great database of information, but it is just a big, massive database of information. And, like say you go the wrong way with it, you just end up getting off
Yeah,
down a rabbit hole of just, useless nonsense really. So
I have to check out how much I use these prompts and AIs in the last, I don't know, maybe there's some nice graph I can pull. I'm curious now. So for Co, what is one innovation you brought because of your smart mind with working with the chemistry team, UNSW? What is one innovation you really brought to the market? I mean, I know a few, but what is one thing
well,
that came into existence because it was you or the team or your energy or
I think we built the whole business on really a single product, very sort of simple cleaning solution. And you think, well, to anybody that's outside or doesn't really know Co or hasn't used the product, it's a cleaning solution. But I think what I saw when I was at home with I have a bit of a contrarian mindset. And also I kind of I'm sort of seem to be attracted like a moth to I guess, well, to categories or ways of doing things that could, that have just got sort of lazy and sort of, almost like treating their customers with contempt because that's just how it is. But I realized when I started thinking more about cleaning, because I was doing the cleaning at home as a sort of a justification for me not having a day job and just doing everything around the house and looking after the kids because I wasn't earning any money. But I kind of realized that with cleaning, it was just this multitude of products. All the products had been, when you think about cleaning and you think about that experience of, when you go shopping for cleaning products, that you, the consumer, have to pick all these different products, and because the shelves are, the way that the supermarkets and the brands, this sort of 70-year-old status quo is, the brands want as much shelf space as they can occupy. How do they do that? Well, they have more versions of the same product, and that's their kind of brand beachhead. And so then you end up with basically this very complex sort of range of cleaning products, just loads of choice. Humans can't deal with choice. We hate it. We don't operate well on it. We don't operate well on abundance either. So you're down on this, aisle in the supermarket. You have got to, as the consumer, curate your own cleaning system on the fly as you're walking down there. And you've got all these brands that are shouting at you, Bamo and this Wizzo, and you've got to pick those. And within a very short amount of time, as you're pushing your trolley, is that okay? Is that going to work? Is it right? Well, all that. And you're putting all these different products, and the because we live in a capitalist society and these brands want to keep growing, they sort of just introduced lots and lots and lots of products. There's more products. They're not looking at trying to simplify things. They're just kind of more products, more
shelf
beachheads.
space?
And that once you've done with the chemical side of things, you then look on the other side of the supermarket aisle, and there's all these tools by other different brands. So they're not even connected. They say, well, those are the cloths. Do those cloths work with that detergent? I got to get a mop. Does that mop work with that floor cleaner? And so I've yet to meet anybody that ever says, my favorite part of a trip to the supermarket is curating my own cleaning system for home. I love it, And so nobody likes doing that because it's just arduous. And then, the resulting, the byproduct or the outcome of that process, that the industry is not customer focused. It is really just focused on selling more shit. That when you look at most people's home cleaning cupboard, unless they're particularly OCD and fastidious, it's usually just a jumble of cleaning products that are just tossed in. One, I tried that, I didn't like it. That one smelled awful. That one didn't work, blah, 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 blah. And so you just got this jumbled mess. It is not a curated cleaning system. And I think that's where the penny dropped for me in going through that experience, a lot, that I was just like, man, this is just not a customer setup. It's not focused for the consumer. And so I kind of just went about this thing about just, how can this be simplified down to, and I realized that cleaning, and I was just thinking about surface cleaning. Surface cleaning is kind of pretty much the same thing around home. You're cleaning organic matter, whether it's food or dust, and dust is made up of skin. You're just cleaning organic matter generally off surfaces. And yet the cleaning industry, or, the consumer cleaning industry has sort of come up with 50 different products that, you need to buy in order to be able to clean all the surfaces in your home. And it's just a load of nonsense. And if there's nothing I love more, is just smashing nonsense setups. I kind of just I like to dismantle them. And that really just resonated with me. And I thought, well, there is this opportunity of building something that is so super simplified from the solution. All you need is this one solution, which is about as simple a solution as we could possibly make. And yet it's formulated in a way that it's very effective across all surfaces. And then so we've got one detergent product to clean all the surfaces around your home, floors, windows, glass, name it. And it does it really well. But what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to put that. I used to work at Dell Computer, who were kind of like early masters of the bundle.
Are you
so,
serious? Dell computers.
Yeah. So that's
From Dell computers to cleaning.
Back in the 90s, and and Dell would direct, and they would basically put these bundles together. I'm not saying they were the first business ever, consumer products companies to put bundles together, but they were doing the thinking for customers. They could have just had a computer here. You can buy all our computers, and our printers are all over here, and our monitors are over here. But no, they put it into a bundle, and that seems obvious today.
Everything in the printer, right? The printer, and in the printer was the computer.
You get the power bundle, you get this bundle, and they're doing the thinking for customers. So I think I took a lot of that out of my experience with working with Dell and Apple and all the other big tech companies, big US tech companies that I went through. But then I thought, when we had formulated this solution, I also, I'd been using these really great professional grade microfiber cloths. I had this really good refillable sprayer. And I was like, that's my experience that I'm having. And I want to sell that as the experience for our customers. I don't want you to have to think. I don't want you to have to go down that aisle in the supermarket. And that was my revolutionary idea, as simple as it sounds, was to sell you less to be able to clean more. And that was kind of, if you think that every cleaning brand that existed at that stage were all predicated, their models were predicated on doing, I'm going to do a different flavor, and this is going to be the power wash version, and this is going to be the sensitive version, because they're trying to occupy that shelf brand space. And I didn't have to do that because I wasn't even in the supermarkets. I was going to be online. And that was one thing that I knew from the outset. I wanted this to be an online business, not a traditional retail business. And so that's how we started. So I was, this bundle, it gives you the complete experience. You get everything in a small kit, ready to go, clean your entire home with this one set. And that was my unique.
I absolutely love your product. Yeah, I love it. We used it in our house in Bondi. We even bought it. We didn't even get anything for free from you. We actually bought it, because we do, my ex-partner and I. Oh my god, we did love your.
Come on now.
Yeah, we did. She was a fan in the family, and I was as well. And yeah, your product is really, really amazing. I really do love it. I'm not kidding. I wish I had it here in Austria. Actually, if you're not gonna ship it here, I'm just gonna copy it. No, I'm kidding. I'm not gonna do that.
We can sort you something out. But I think, interestingly as well, that idea is such an antithesis to where the rest of the industry is, and also where people, we've all been conditioned to grow up and go, I'm going to get down to the supermarket and I'm going to pick all these things. That's all most of us have ever known, because this has been the status quo for 70 years. And so, as simple as it sounds, it was actually quite...
Can I add something? I think I just love that you can use your base cleaning liquid, for so many surface areas. It's annoying after using a product. It's almost annoying using anything else.
You don't realize the preposterous ridiculousness of having all these different products when you've used our product. So, but the interesting thing is that we've never done well on Google advertising. And the reason is that we've sort of realized, after having spent quite a lot on Google advertising and it not working, is that nobody is Googling what we do. Because, they'll Google our brand name. I realize that that's a nonsense. You just end up paying Google lots of money to sort of,
branded keywords.
Yeah.
Okay, great opinion. Like, I love it. Branded keywords. Why shouldn't you pay for it? Tell me 3 reasons. Yeah.
Well, hey, no. So my point here is actually not on the branded keywords, because people are just being lazy, or they're just
Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
googling Coe and then they're just clicking on our sponsor. There's a whole thing around that. My point was, nobody is googling looking for a single universal cleaning detergent bundled with some washable cloths and reusable sprayer that can clean everything around my home. Nobody's doing it because they don't even think of a thought that it could exist. And so that's how, even we're 9 years in, and I've yet to find, there's a plethora of eco clean brands that have come about since us. I wouldn't say we were the very first, but we were early 9 years ago, selling cleaning products online, through Facebook ads. But even now, 9 years later, still nobody's knocked us off. I actually find it quite strange in a way. Anyway, let that continue.
Let's keep it like that. Yeah.
It's all out there. You could, but it.
I think people always love to. I mean, actually, I have no idea. I'm doing the opinion thing. Never mind. I was curious about your ad stuff because, there are very strong opinions about brand keywords. So I love getting anecdotes for that.
Pi, I'm not going to lie to you. It's not my space. I'm not on the digital marketing side. I'm sort of products and
Yeah,
customer.
yeah, yeah.
You would get a bum steer from me if I started giving you some opinions on that. But I know that one bit to be true is that nobody ever Googles the description of what our product does, and that's
Yeah,
just so.
100%.
Just the takeaway from that, for people watching is that consumers at least don't always know what it is that they want, and I sort
Yeah.
of, not to put myself in the elevated space of Steve Jobs, but he said that. I remember him saying that about the iPhone and the iPad. They no, we're not going to go out and start polling customers. Would you use a large screen phone? When all we had was the Motorola's and not the Nikons, brain gone. What's the finished phone? Nokia.
iPhone.
You know,
Okay.
people weren't Googling or looking for this, in 2006, because they don't even know. Do you know what I mean? Now, again, I'm not sort of putting Coe in that sort of rarefied space as Apple, but just my point is that
Why not? It's true.
well, I just think the point is that people don't always know. So you can go and ask. I got to tell you, when I had the idea for this, and given that I had 3 fairly miserable failures behind me, and I was sort of, showing this concept of to my friends, and this was very early doors, sort of, even before the minimal viable product, and I was showing them and stuff, and I was going, "Oh, you could just have this one product, clean everything." Like a lot of my friends going, "Nobody's going to want that." They all like the fragrances, they like the different products and everything, and so sometimes you got to sort of punch through the general, consensus and belief system.
Yeah, you have to be a bit of a contrarian, right?
A bit of a nutcase,
Yeah.
I think, probably.
Yeah, you have to be a bit of a contrarian. I mean, I'm too, maybe I'm not a contrarian. Sometimes I'm just annoying, but it's a small line. I'm aware. I'm stuck on the awareness phase for 36 years, so that's good enough for me.
It's a good, at least you're aware. That's the main thing.
Well, I want to wrap this up slowly, but one thing I'm curious about.
Usually, like, I don't mind, whatever.
What should people ask you for? Like, because imagine if young entrepreneurs come, or older, it doesn't really matter. What would you like them to ask you? How can you help them? Like, what questions can you help them answer?
What's my little nuggets of advice, having gone through this journey, I guess, is to somebody that's thinking of doing the same thing. I think now having gone through this journey, there's some questions. And I ask myself, what might I do next? Because there will be at some point, I imagine, an opportunity to do something else. And, I think, to my mind, going back 9 years ago, and I recognize this is still a thing today, we as entrepreneurs are told, well, you've got to have the vision. It's got to be this big. You've got to take over the world, and it's going to be. And a lot of that comes from, you need to satisfy investors. And the investors need it to be a monster hit, that's going to be global domination and what have you. And I think, that's kind of how I started Coe, and I kind of just, I think more from, I wanted it to build a successful business, but I also sort of saw that, this is a sustainable, sort of eco focus. I want it to have as big an impact as possible, because the bigger the impact, the more goodness, that the business can do. But I think it's just a good question to ask yourself is that, big isn't necessarily better. The biggest isn't a pathway to happiness. That small is actually pretty cool. Do you know what I mean? And if you can build a business that doesn't require investors, doesn't even necessarily require employees, then that could be pretty cool as well. Now, it depends on your appetite, but be under no illusions that I think the bigger that you're going to shoot for this kind of and all the rest of it, and there's ego, and it's going to be massive. That comes with a reduced chance of success, number one, and also, are you sure that you're going to have the stomach and the will to push through to that? Now, there are people out there that will, but it is, as you know yourself, it's a very, very taxing, challenging, like emotional breakdowning potential experience that you're undertaking. It's great to write it down and be ambitious and all the rest of it. I'm all for that, but don't underestimate the investment that it will take from you. And it's not, I'm say that not to put anybody off, but it doesn't have to be the mega moonshot. I think there's something, especially now with the abundance of technology and tools and platforms and AI and all the rest of it, that there are some really great opportunities where, we have opportunities to build new businesses, replace older legacy equivalent businesses, and do something really fulfilling, exciting, something that can still, give you a good life without all the baggage. Employees are hard. Managing a team's hard. I have to say, it's not my forte. Managing investors is really hard. These are really freaking hard things, and it takes a very, very, special, talented individual with a lot of cross skills to be able to bring all that together. And it's very difficult. That's so I went through it kind of blind because I didn't know any better, and I'm glad I have
Good in your classes now.
yeah. I get to wear my glasses.
No,
That's
no,
just the thing.
that's
There's
great
no
advice.
shame. That's just my message. Is bigger isn't necessarily better, and you could have that's just it. And I think we're all sort of a little bit pre-programmed. This is going to be the money shot. I'm repeating myself now, but it's kind of hit home to me. And also just the what sort of life do you want to have? So if you're all in and you've got an idea and you really are resolute, and I'm going to take this all the way to the top, fucking go for it. But if your idea, and I think this is another thing, if you are not completely and utterly obsessed with this idea that you want to do, if you wild horses aren't going to stop you, not even your wife who's telling you to go and get a freaking job because you haven't got any money, you're going to ignore all of that because you are hell-bent, which I was. If I had not been, then I wouldn't have got through it. If I'd actually gone, Jesus Christ, what are you doing? You need to go and get a job and just, you've got 2 kids. What are you doing? Before it sort of, we hit this trajectory, I should have stopped like way earlier, really, technically, because I was being very, very irresponsible, but I was just obsessed and hyper-focused in true ADHD style. And I was completely blinkered. And that kind of gets you through. That gets you through the shit. And if you're not like that, then I kind of would, I would recommend you reconsidering if it's like a half-baked, I really fancy having a big company. Yeah, it kind of sounds okay. If you're like a bit like that, let's just stick with the day job.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think
it's a madness. It's not madness, but it's not a balanced, it's not something that rational people embark upon. Generally,
no. I mean, I think there's this thing from the NVIDIA CEO Jensen, I think he's called.
Yeah, he's great. Yeah, he's great.
He speaks about suffering and stuff, and Arnold Schwarzenegger does too. He's Austrian.
Yeah.
I think you cannot have a plan B when you enter. That's like from Arnold. Like, it's true. You cannot have a plan B, and then
it's not going to work.
And you need to suffer. Like, I have to say, the type of suffering was not what I really was. I knew it's going to be hard, like I knew, and I'm good in it. But my partner leaving me was not the suffering I really wanted. I mean, it was like fucking crushing me, but I think it's part of it. It grows you. And then to add a female person to it, like Sheryl Sandberg, she would say, CEO of Meta, she would say, career is like a jungle gym. So what she meant is like, yeah, you don't really know. You just do things and or a jungle, I don't know, Jim, I think it was jungle, I don't know what it was. But basically the idea was, it's like wild, it's like wild. You need to fight and do things. Yeah. Anyhow, that does resonate with you what I said, or is this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the other thing is as well, it's not for everybody. I do have concerns, and I know that I sound like I'm just trying to put people off from doing it, but there's a lot of kind of YouTubers and stuff. You just got to get out and try it, man. And it's great for a proportion of the population, but I do worry about this kind of like this. There's a sort of like this hyper, I don't know what you call it, like positivity. You just got to believe it and then it'll happen and all that sort of thing. And I think there's a kind of a responsibility that I feel I have, having gone through this, is it's not being negative, but just, don't give up your day job unless you're really mad enough to go for this, and you're mad enough to push through, because that's generally what it's going to take is it's kind of sacrifice and all the rest of it, and not listening to people around you and everything. And I'd even say, the previous ideas that I had leading up to Co, whilst I'm definitely prone to getting obsessed about stuff, it sort of the idea would start dying off, and the passion. I start off really passionate, and then kind of like a few months in, it's a bit like meeting not that I've been in the dating game for decades, but you're sort of like in that dating game, and you meet the one, it's like, oh, that guy's going to be brilliant, it's going to be amazing, blah, blah, blah. And then it's sort of, you realize it's naturally not, and it's sort of like the enthusiasm dies off, and man, and when I sort of got onto Co and came up with that concept, and we had the minimal viable product, nothing would have stopped me. I was obsessed, like at next level. And like I say, I've gone through a lot of obsessions. This was so next level that, in spite of the fact that I had 2 kids, young children, that we weren't financially, I didn't have like a load of money in the bank or anything. I absolutely should have been responsible and gone and got a job and made sure that my family were taken care of. Thankfully, my wife had a reasonably good job and kind of carried us through. But it was terrible. I kind of am a bit embarrassed by it, because I didn't look for permission, and we weren't talking through a plan or anything. I was just out there in the just going, I am chasing this and I can't get off. I just can't.
Yeah.
And
my partner also carried me through, even though we're not together anymore. But she did carry me through. I have to give her huge credit for that. So definitely you cannot walk this alone. I see it now.
I can ask you a bit of a personal question, but do you think it was could it have been, was it a contributor, your sacrifice and focus on your business that sort of was partly to do with that?
Yeah, I mean, for her leaving me. Yeah, happy to answer. I mean, it was me not being honest. No, I want to answer it. No, I like to answer it because I think I want to be accountable. It was me not being honest with myself and her around our family plans. So it was kind of delaying it. That was 100% me. I was like kind of lying, even though I didn't want to, but I was. It was me focusing on the business, and we moved here and not care. Like, I tried to help, but not like understanding what she needed. And I think it was my focus on the business, this being my priority. I mean, I kind of realized that it was kind of silly that, you can have the family and do it. Like, I have high energy and I do really love children, and I somehow thought it sequentially. But then meeting people like you, there's no real rule. But the problem is I'm very obsessive. I can do one thing at a time. I'm terrible on multitasking. She didn't find a job as well. Like, there was no security. Then she worked on her own startup a little bit. So I think the situation it was a different country for both of us, even as my home country. Austria is not my home anymore, really. I'm 12 years abroad.
Yeah. So you're both
Bondi on the beach. Yeah. So I think definitely it contributed, my not asking for permission, my selfishness. There were parts that I think she really could have done better, but I don't want to talk about it. I mean, but I think my responsibility was the business. I focused on it. I thought it's going to be okay, and I just stretched it too much. I was like, oh yeah.
Well, and like you, I fully, I crossed the line and carried running over it. And I'm incredibly thankful. And when I say, although, I'm the founder of the business, I've got my co-founder who came along a few months into things. But I say really, that without Celia's support, and basically tolerating the madness, it wouldn't have happened. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
without Kim tolerating me, I wouldn't be where I am. Raised now a small round of money. I cannot disclose it fully.
no,
The
no,
business is doing very well. I think without
right.
her support, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
I'm really happy
100%,
for
yeah.
you, Pi. It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's great, and it's a journey, isn't it?
It is, and that's great. It's a great learning for the future. So yeah. Hey Adam, I want to say a big thank you for taking time from your busy life. I know you're very busy, and
Anytime for you, Pi. I mean that as well. So it's a pleasure. I hope somebody somewhere is able to derive some useful nugget out of the
yeah.
out of
So, what is one last words to the audience from you before we close this off? What is one thing you have to say to the people cleaning their home and trying to tidy up their life or their bathroom? Like, what will you tell them? One sentence of wisdom, or two or three.
spot there. What would I say? I think, in terms of, I think with the business, for me, and absolutely at the core of my heart, it has always been about bringing some kind of level of positive experience, joy, which may seem like a strange thing given we're cleaning products, but there's a lot of joy that comes from our customers, on the comments and everything. And I get a huge sense of satisfaction from that. And I think, just my lesson from all of that is that you can, it's not that this is first thinking or original, but that the focus on bringing people joy, happiness is, you can build a business around that. And that's always the way it has been. And I've always really from day one have, honored and been incredibly grateful for every single person that's a customer of ours. And why would I not be? It's just such a lovely two-way thing that, every sort of product and everything that I've done at Co has always been, it's about the customer. You obviously sometimes have to balance commercial decisions as well. It can't all just be have it all for free, because I just want everyone to be happy. But that satisfaction of doing something that makes people's lives a little bit better, a little bit happier, healthier, is just it was a very fulfilling thing. I just feel very lucky that I've managed to sort of carve myself out business that's all about that, really.
Congrats, Adam.
That's right.
And thank you so much for your time. See you soon.